Oh, Mariana, I really like your background.
Thanks. It's by an Salvadoreñan illustrator, Sonia Lasso.
Oh, nice. So cool. Okay, we're going to wait a minute more and we'll start. Well, as soon as Rashmi logs in.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, team. How are you?
Good.
Good or excellent?
Incredible.
So,
Excellent.
better impossible, right?
What are you doing, Marcela? That's so cool.
I'm learning macrame for my anxiety.
Awesome.
No, just to enjoy it. So while I'm in meets, I'm like also listening and then doing something with my hands, so I don't get like distracted with something else.
That's so cool. I have to say, for me, if I don't do something, I get distracted really easily. So I tend to either play on my phone or sometimes I color during meetings.
Yes, I used to have Play-Doh, and well, now I'm doing this.
That's so cool.
Yes, Carla, when I finish, when I finish learning and feel like confident with what I'm creating, I will send you my designs. I will send you a gift.
Well, you can be our new swag provider inside.
That would be nice. Just give me some time to improve my skills.
Please, Marcela, I want a gift too. Macrame gift too. Cool. So I think, well, let me check Rashmi.
Just in the phone with Rashmi, I think she should be on soon.
Okay. Hi, Javier.
Awesome.
I'm the guilty of her being late. Hello, how are you, Lina?
Good, good. Really excited. I'm very excited about this talk.
Yes, I think it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rashmi.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lina from Communications and Content. So now that everyone is on board, I wanted to thank everyone for being here. As you know, during March, we've been having some activities to reflect and analyze how to have a more diverse and inclusive environment where women are equals in every field. And this is why we're so excited to have Rashmi Gopinath with us. She's going to be the speaker for today, and she has a very, very interesting career. I suggest that you visit her LinkedIn page and Google her. She has a Bachelor of Engineering from the University of Mumbai, an MBA from Northwestern University, and more importantly, she's an investing partner. She works at BCG as a general partner, and that's where she exactly where she plays a key role in our story and in our growth. And more important for today, she's an advisor to the Women Startup Lab Accelerator. She has been a mentor for many women, and I don't want to take any more of her time. I'm sure she has more interesting things to say than me. So Rashmi, you have the floor. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for that very generous introduction. Definitely feels a bit funny hearing it from somebody else. I never really thought about my career in any particular big plan or a charter that I'd set out for myself. I'd say that I was definitely fortunate for meeting a lot of really interesting people. All the success that I've had as an investor has primarily been because of the amazing founders and the amazing companies that I've backed. So I take zero credit for any of that. It's all the hard work that teams like yourselves put in that make us look good as well. So thank you for the opportunity. It's really great to meet all of you here. Yalo has definitely been a special company in our portfolio. For me, it was special in many regards. It was the first time I wrote a check as an investor in a team that I hadn't met in person before. And so I'd say that the pandemic in some ways was a positive for us, that we got to meet such an exciting team and were able to back such an interesting company in a space that's growing really rapidly. So it's been amazing getting to know Javi and Patrick and Carla and the rest of the team here. So thank you. I don't know what format you wanted for this session. I did not anticipate speaking for an hour. So if you want to make it more Q&A, we can do it Q&A. If there are specific topics that you wanted me to cover, happy to do that. So I'll need some guidance here.
What we can do is you can first tell us a little bit about if you want your experience as a woman mentoring other women, and then we start talking a little bit more about the questions.
Yeah. So typically, Rashmi, we have these Yalo Como talks, right? Which is during lunch hours. It's a bit early for you. But during lunch hours, we'll just sit, and the idea is to have someone incredible like you on board. So share a bit about like your history, and I think it would be great to like just for everyone here, like how do you go from starting in engineering to ending in investing, and yeah, like studying in India, going to the US. I think it's fascinating what you have done. And would love to hear it, and then we can open up to Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely, happy to. So I started off my life in India. So I was born and raised in Mumbai. For folks who haven't been to India, Mumbai is almost like the business capital of India. It's a very cosmopolitan city. It's almost like New York. I would say it's the closest analogy. And I would say that's where I kind of got immersed into a very cross-cultural, diverse upbringing, where it was almost like a mixed pot of different cultures from India. And again, India's kind of unique in a way where every state is different. Every state speaks a different language. The food, the cultures, the backgrounds are very different. And being raised again in kind of that mixed pot of different cultures was definitely a very interesting experience. I was one of the geekier kids, so always was more oriented towards math and science. And again, growing up in India, I would say the more logical options for most of the kids growing up was you either become a doctor or an engineer. I figured that I would get less queasy
Yo
in
sí, yo sí
engineering.
me gusta comprar una casa, pero porque ibas a una familia. Pues si yo tuviera ya la edad de mi papá, a veces pienso que
Jose or Geo, please put mute.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure that was a question for me. But yeah, I would say that education-wise, there were two options. I figured I'd be less queasy in an engineering setting, so decided to go down the engineering path. I had an undergrad degree in electrical engineering, although I haven't worked a day in my life in an electrical engineering setting. Moved quickly into software engineering right after my undergrad days. The first half of my career was primarily in product roles. So I built products and was quite excited about the ability to develop something new and bring it to market. And one of, I would say, the core foundational blocks that I had during my early career at Oracle, where I was mainly building database and DevOps products, was how do you build and launch products that touch millions of developers worldwide. I did that for about 4.5 years. I mainly reported into Thomas Kurian's org. Thomas Kurian now runs Google Cloud. And Oracle was a place where everyone is deeply technical. It doesn't matter whether you're a director or a VP, you build products. And so it was a great place to have a very strong product background, and having the mindset of how do you really build something that people care about and would appeal to a mass scale. I moved to the US after I got married. My husband was based in the US. And the first job that I held when I came to the US was at GE Healthcare. And there again, I started off in a product role. We were building a new product. And so my role was to help launch this new product, which was mainly a machine learning and analytics product targeted for healthcare use cases. So the pain point that we were looking to address was solve the data interoperability challenge, where the US healthcare system, as we have also experienced with the pandemic, is severely broken. I would say one of the basic fundamental challenges that we were trying to solve is that the data formats or the data sources across different health systems is not normalized. So they don't really speak very easily to each other, which for me was very surprising, given that we were able to solve it for the banking and the financial industry. We were able to solve it for other industries, but for healthcare, it just seemed impossible, where if I went to a particular hospital for a particular health condition, and if I went to a different hospital to see a different specialty provider, my records wouldn't just be imported and come through all the way. So it needed a lot of manual processes and stitching to bring together the data from EMRs and claims and financial systems and other healthcare systems into creating like a normalized view around that patient. And that was a pain point that we were looking to address. And we were also building more of a vertical stack approach on building the analytics products on top of it, which was helping the physicians at the point of care know what are the top 2 or 3 things that they should know about the patient. So instead of doctors having to fill data or search for data in EMRs, spend more time with the patients and understanding what's going on and providing them the things that they needed at that point of care. So it was a very interesting use case and a very interesting pain point, and I would say a broader mission of helping the healthcare industry be a little bit more efficient. So it was a lot of fun building that product. I did that for about 4.5 years while I was at GE, and that was the time when I was getting my MBA degree as well. So I did my MBA part-time when I went to Kellogg. This was at Northwestern for my evening MBA program. And I was, again, fortunate in a way that GE thought it was going to be important to retain me while I went to school. They paid for my tuition. And in turn, I was able to apply the learnings that I was getting back from my MBA program into school every day, into work every day. During my MBA, I did a couple of internships. One was with a growth equity fund in Boston that focused on healthcare investments, and one was with a private equity fund in Chicago that mainly focused on buyouts in the enterprise software space. And I'd say the MBA was the first time I was exposed to the investing side, and I found it quite fascinating on how I could leverage some of the product background and the operating background that I had to apply that into the investing side. I loved the internship experience that I had on the growth equity side, and decided that was what I wanted to do. And for me, it was again the appeal of working with small early stage startups, helping them on the go-to-market side, on the product side, into becoming something much larger. So that's how I ended up at Intel Capital post my MBA. So that was my first full-time investing role, where my job was to build out our enterprise software portfolio. So I mainly focused on investing across cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, DevOps, data analytics, and AI investments. And these were all the spaces that I had built products in before. It was an amazing experience. Over the 2.5 years that I was at Intel Capital, I invested in about 7 companies, all 7 of which have since exited. There were 2 IPOs and 5 M&As. That's a track record that I wish I can keep for every fund that I'm at, but it's a hard one to follow. But one of the things that I had noticed during my experience at Intel Capital was that the investors in the boardroom that had been operators in the past had that extra credibility with the founders and were able to relate a lot of their firsthand operating experience building startups themselves. And I did not have that. I had been at big companies before, and I'd been at intrapreneurial experiences before, but I did not have the startup experience. So I decided to take a detour and get some startup experience myself. And so I chose to go to one of my seed stage portfolio companies from Intel Capital. This was a company called Blue Data, which is in the cloud infrastructure space. And I joined the team of 5 engineers there in an undefined role. So I was the first business hire, and my role was to figure out everything else except writing code. So I started off first in a product role to help build out the product roadmap. We were still in version 0.5, so help build our 1.0 product. And then I switched into a marketing role to help launch the company out of stealth. I wrote our website content. I built our product marketing collaterals, worked with the PR agencies to help launch the company, and then ran sales for the next 8 months and got us our first 8 to 10 customer accounts. And that was by far the most difficult job I have ever done. And I made a mental checklist to myself: never take a sales job again. The pressure of getting your scores assigned back to 0 each quarter was pretty tough. But at the same time, the excitement of landing our first 15 logos, and we were going after the Fortune 500, so landing a Walmart and AT&T was really exciting. So I did that for about 8 months, built out the team, and then switched into a business development role. So I was kind of the 0 to 1 person across all the different departments and helped build our partnerships across the large tech companies and the system integrators. So I built our partnerships with SIs, with OEMs, resellers, cloud vendors, and the big data vendors, given that we were a big data startup. And some of the partners included folks like Intel and HP and Microsoft and others. And I would say within 8 months of building out that business development team, the partners that we were building those relationships with were quite intrigued about what we were doing, and we ended up with multiple acquisition offers. At that point in time, like, we had offers from Intel and HP and Microsoft, and I at that time did not want to go back to a big company, so decided to leave the company in the safe hands as they were wrapping up their acquisition to HPE. And I went to a growth stage startup called Couchbase in the NoSQL database space, mainly to lead the global business development team. And the way I had decided that was the right opportunity for me was I had the early stage experience. I figured if I got the growth stage experience, that would round out what I was looking for on the operating side. And it was an amazing experience. I joined the team when they had raised a Series D round of funding. And my role was to help figure out how to grow the top line through inorganic means, where all of the top line growth was coming through direct sales at that time. And so I built out our partner ecosystem, mainly focused on the low-hanging fruit and the partners that would help drive immediate revenue growth for the company. And I'd say within a year, we had a small team on the biz dev side. It was a team of 5 people spread globally. We added about 30% to our top line numbers. So it was, again, a very fascinating experience to see for a growth stage company, how do you grow that exponential growth curve without necessarily burning cash on the OpEx side. And so I did that for about 2.5 years when decided it was time for me to come back to the fold, go back on the dark side. And there were a lot of options that had popped up, most of them being the traditional Sandhill VC funds, more financially focused. And Microsoft Ventures was one of the options that had come my way. And what I found really interesting about the opportunity to be a part of Microsoft Ventures was it was the first time that Microsoft was setting up a venture capital team. So coming in fresh from the entrepreneurial side was a great experience to help build a fund from the grounds up. And while Microsoft had obviously a lot of brand value and credibility, M12, which is the ventures team, had none. So it was, again, the challenge of taking on the less obvious path and building out that thought leadership and the credibility for the ventures team. So decided to join Microsoft Ventures. I was the second person to join the team. And our goal was we had set ourselves up to becoming one of the top corporate venture funds in 2 years, and really excited that we were able to get there within 18 months. It was a lot of work, but a lot of exciting work, building out the rest of the team, building out the platform capabilities, delivering on the promise to the founders that we were backing, that Microsoft would be a valuable partner in their journey, and getting on to a really fast, accelerated path. We made about close to 90 investments in 4 years that I was there, and we had a global presence. So it was a very gratifying experience to back, again, amazing companies and be able to build Microsoft's brand value on the investment side as well. And then in those 4.5 years, again, there were some inbounds that were coming in from more of the traditional VC funds, which I found less appealing, given that I wasn't really looking to leave Microsoft. And if there was a reason why I would leave, would be, again, for another entrepreneurial effort, which when B Capital reached out in 2019, it was very interesting to find a growth stage, financially focused fund that also had the partnership with someone like a Boston Consulting Group to help portfolio companies access the Global 2000 customers through the relationships that BCG has. And that was very unique. It wasn't something that I had seen any of the other financially focused funds do. And it's still a new platform. When I joined the team, we were in the process of closing out Fund 2. And so I'd say we were still in a very early infancy stage as a fund. And so there was a lot to build. There was a lot to do, which I always find myself getting quite attracted to is that building and the operating part of it. So joined the team in January last year. So I've been here for over a year now, coming up on a 1.5 years. And it has been an amazing experience. I really like the team a lot. We have a global platform which helps us, again, deliver on the vision that we have, is to back the best companies regardless of where they're based at. And so our investment thesis is fairly broad. The filter and the lens that we look at companies is very broad. And I would say that in building out our horizontal enterprise software portfolio, which is primarily what I lead for the fund. It has been a great experience investing in amazing, inspiring companies like Yalo. Last year, we made about 7 investments on the horizontal enterprise software space. This year has been on an equally fast pace where we've invested in 5 new companies in the enterprise domain. So definitely feel fortunate to be part of this team, and even more fortunate to work with amazing founders like yourself. And the last point I'll mention is, I mean, one of the things that I've always aspired to do is pay it forward. And especially when it comes to underrepresented minorities. And I'm an immigrant myself. I have been through, I would say, the tough part of getting assimilated in a new country, which has been very welcoming. So I definitely feel lucky with that. But at the same time, making sure that each one of us leaves the door open for the people that are walking in behind us, and making sure that we provide the level of support and guidance that we wish we had received for other folks.
Yes. I'm sorry, I had to jump.
No, absolutely. It's something I feel very, very passionate about, and which is why I try and take as much time as I possibly can to work with other female founders, other female investors. The investment community is notorious for having terrible numbers on diversity. And so anything that I can do in my part of ensuring that I can get more females to come into investing roles, I can get more females to start companies, I'm all for it. And that goes across the board. It's not just tied to females, it's tied to any underrepresented minorities across race, across gender, across sexual orientation. I think all of those we have to keep in mind. I've always seen firsthand how diversity can lead to the best outcomes. And so for me, it's important that for each of my companies, I continue to push for that as well. So if I see a portfolio company where diversity isn't represented in the exec teams or across the board, it is something that I typically push for. So I know it was a very long monologue, but that was, I mean, my entire story. And yeah, happy to answer any questions or take this in any direction.
That was amazing. I wish I could have your structure and be able to tell that story so cohesively. We have a couple of questions, and I'm sure as you talk, there will be more. One of the questions was, what is the biggest challenge that you have when you are giving mentoring other women?
I don't think I've really experienced any challenges mentoring other women. I think there's definitely a lot of, for me, it's always inspiring to see the hustle and the hunger that other females have gone through to get to the points that they have. I do think that there needs to be more of a mentorship or an allyship kind of a model. And this is where, I mean, I encourage all the men in my network to do more as well. Is while we do want to make sure that there is fairness and parity in all aspects, the truth of it is that I'd say as females and as underrepresented minorities, the external challenges are a little different. And so it's not fair to look at everybody in the same lens as what we would do, I would say, in a normal work setting. And just to give a simple example, like with the COVID and the pandemic situation, I am a mom myself, and I know how difficult childcare and schooling can be in a remote first environment. Like my daughter is on her school Zoom the entire day. I am the IT support person at home. So if she has IT issues, I might be late for a few minutes on my other meetings. And I don't know if all the men that I work with have a similar situation or not. And so it's just being more empathetic and more, I would say, having that sense of belonging, where just asking somebody, hey, are you doing okay? Do you need some extra time for other things that you may have in your environment? Like some folks may have to take care of the elderly because of the pandemic situation. And so just making sure that, I mean, as leaders, we're talking about our vulnerabilities as well, and building that environment and culture of empathy and trust is important. While, I mean, all of us are focused on deliverables and results all the time, I'd say that adding in that level of humanity makes all the difference. And so when I speak or mentor like other females, that is something that I ask them to, again, pay it forward if they're leaders within their organizations. Having them like check in with other folks to make sure that things are okay is important. It was also coincidental that yesterday I was on a panel with A.T. Kearney on International Women's Day, and we talked about what does it mean to be vulnerable as a leader. And one of the things that we should all be okay with is leaders are humans too. We have our weaknesses, we make mistakes. We don't have to know all the answers. It's okay to ask for help. And like making that seem okay is important. And so in terms of, I mean, the culture that we want to cultivate at a company, that voice has to be set from the top. And that's something that I always provide that feedback back to the folks that I coach and mentor, as well as ensuring that they're cultivating that culture of trust and empathy within their organizations.
That's great. And I have a follow-up question about that. And it's for the people that are starting and want a mentor. How do you look for a mentor, and what are the things that you should consider when choosing a mentor? Because that's as important as having a mentor itself.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I would say you want to pick a mentor who's, I mean, obviously somebody who you look up to, but also someone who's going to be able to give you the time and give you the kind of feedback and the help that you need. I would say there's different levels of mentorship, all the way from more of like somebody who you look up to and you want to learn from them in terms of how they've done things, to somebody who you want to be a champion. So if you kind of chart out that spectrum, I would say the champion is on the extreme end of the spectrum, but it's somebody who actually has your back, who's going to open doors for you, who's invested in your career, who wants to make sure that you move ahead, somebody who you can call up to brainstorm things. And that, I would say, as you think about mentors across that entire spectrum, they're going to be different individuals. In many cases, your peers can be your mentors too. You could also have somebody who reports to you as a mentor, because you have things to learn from them as well. So I would say that you don't necessarily just have to look up to pick your mentors. Like, look around you and identify like who are those people in your circle that you would trust to talk about things that you need help on. And I would say the one thing that I've always found quite interesting in that mentor-mentee relationship is the roles get reversed quite often. And so in many cases, you as a mentee can offer things that are going to be helpful and insights that are going to be helpful to your mentors. So I always like to leave that question open at the end of, like, when I sit down with my mentors, I always leave it open. I'm like, what can I do for you? Like, what are things that I can help you with? So that, I would say, is something to consider as you're picking your mentors.
You're on mute, Lina.
Thank you. We have a question from Marcela. She says, how would you consider yourself about taking risks? Risk seeker, adverse, medium?
Well, as an investor, definitely a risk seeker. And I would say that I have always erred on taking the non-obvious path. I joined my first startup, which was a seed stage startup, like I mentioned, when I had a 6-month-old baby. And I mean, the first question that most people ask me, like, is this the right time? Like, you're going to have insane hours. And I honestly couldn't think of a better time to do it. When I joined my second startup, again, I had the options to go back to investing, but I knew that I had to get a little bit more operational experience on the growth stage before I went back. When I joined Microsoft, the options were to take more of the safer bets of going to large financial VCs, but I chose to come to Microsoft again because it was the opportunity to build a fund from the grounds up. And the same at B Capital. When I joined B Capital for the first time, when they reached out, I had not heard of the fund. As I dug in more, I got to know the team better. I loved the vision of what we were looking to build. But again, it was the non-obvious choice of coming to B Capital versus going to a Sequoia or a Lightspeed. And so I always think of myself as, I would say, picking the non-obvious choice. And with my investments as well, I would say definitely more of a risk taker. I like to break boundaries, and I like to be the person that's always testing which rules we can break. So when we invested in Yalo, it was the first LATAM investment we did. And we got a lot of questions on how much do we really know the market? And my point was, it does not matter. It's a global company. And we have to invest in markets that we believe are going to be big, that are going to give us the best leverage. And for conversational commerce, like, there couldn't be a better market than LATAM to begin with. And very soon we're going to grow and expand in new spaces. So I definitely think of myself as a risk taker.
Wow, that was amazing. Now Quetzali has a question. She wants to ask herself.
Hi, my name is Quetzali. Nice to meet you, Rashmi. And before I have my question, I wanted to thank you for telling your story, because it's really important to tell the stories by the people that are living those stories. Because for women like us, it helps others to keep telling their stories. So that being said, I'm happy to know that somebody like you and sensitive like you is leading and building products for people like us. And that's really cool. So I have a question for you, and it's hand in hand with your amazing journey and all of this experience, how it is to be a woman in a world with so little representation.
Most of the days I don't think about it. I mean, I'd say that I've also been fortunate that I've worked alongside men who don't make it obvious. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd say that the performance, what you bring to the table, the results of what you're delivering should speak for themselves. If you are in an environment where that is not being recognized, you obviously try to make a change. But if despite everything that you're doing, if it doesn't change, then you need to put yourself in a different situation.
And how do we build more representation, like for girls to know that there is girls in tech, like to actually push that female figure inside of tech?
So I would say that it happens at very different levels, and it's something that I have thought a lot about myself. And so there are, I would say, university projects that I work with. There are high school projects that I work with. And one of, I know this is probably too much detail, but one of the interesting nuggets that I had noticed was, if you look at females in STEM careers, across, I would say, the elementary and middle school, the percentage of girls that still score quite high and do really well in STEM is fairly high. There is a drop off that happens between high school and college.
Yes.
And quite a lot of that is attributed to not seeing enough examples or not having enough role models of people who've done extremely well in STEM careers, who can show that you can build a very financially secure career and livelihood by being in these careers. And so that's why it said like the change needs to come at different levels. And I mean, there are university projects that I work with, there are high school projects that I work with. But I would say even when it comes to a work setting, one of the things that I think we need to do a lot more, and I know at companies like Microsoft and Google, I mean, we do have programs where I would say high performing females in different roles within the organizations are paired up with the mentors and the sponsors that can help them through that journey. I think a lot of it is also tied to the community aspect of it. And so, like in the US, we have this program called Girls Who Code. I partner up with like the Women Startups Lab and a number of other accelerator programs where it's all around encouraging females to make that bold leap and become a founder and become an entrepreneur, and providing that support system around it that'll help them get access to funding, get access to talent, help them avoid some of the traps that most of the, I would say, inception stage companies go through. And there definitely needs to be more of a dialogue around it. There's, I would say, a lot more awareness right now that there needs to be a more proactive and active process in ensuring that we support underrepresented minorities and females in tech careers, in their entrepreneurial careers, in investment roles. And I think there's a lot of steps taken in the right direction. Is that enough? Not yet, but I think those are all steps in the right direction. Like in California and I would say a bunch of other states, for example, now it's mandatory to have a certain percentage of females in board roles. We're going to see something similar to that again in terms of like when I was at Microsoft, for the number of executive VPs or the CVPs in the company, there was like a mandatory requirement of a certain number of those roles to be filled only by underrepresented minorities or females. And so I would say the more of that gets mandated to a certain degree, but then also becomes second nature, because as more females grow into those exec roles, they will ensure that there is going to be representation within their teams. And so I do see that trending a lot more positively going forward. But I think ultimately the onus is on each one of us. I always say that it's on each one of us to make sure that we're leaving the door open for the person behind us, and we're providing them the right level of support and guidance that we wished we had received earlier on. So more of those dialogues that we have, and everything that we can do in our capacity to help and support other people, I think will be great. It just creates like a virtuous cycle.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now Raquel has a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Super. Rashmi, thank you so much for being here. I have this question. So you have been gone through engineering and product and business development, investment, right? So what would you say has been the key component or principle or habits that has allowed you to move in so different areas, reinvent yourself, learn and grow so much in this path successfully?
Yeah, so I mean, again, this is it's a little of standing on the soapbox and talking about myself, which I am terrible at doing. But I'd say if I look back at some of the things that worked well, one I would say is is always being very curious and asking a lot of questions. And it's not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions, but asking questions because those are genuinely like things that I believe if we ask, like we're going to get to a better outcome. So again, one of the things that I always encourage, like within my teams and my networks, is you don't always have to go along with what somebody is saying. Like if you are concerned about something, or if you think something can be done differently, like raise that up, bring that up. Unless you voice it, like nobody would know what you have to say. So don't worry about what other people are going to think. And it could be a very naive question, but that's okay. I think it definitely helps people show that you're engaged, you have a point of view. And in many cases could be the question that other people had on their minds, but they were always afraid to ask. The second I would say is what I'd mentioned before is go for the non-obvious thing and raise your hand for the tough projects. I remember like when I was in the first startup that I was in, when I was asked to run sales, it was something I'd never done before. And the first few months were extremely painful, where I was calling up the CIOs and the CXOs at Fortune 500 companies and telling them your data center choices are wrong, and here's why you need to buy this product. And it was a seed stage company that nobody had heard of. But at the same time, I would say getting those first 10, 15 wins was extremely satisfying. And so things that you may not be sure of whether you can do it or not, I would say still raise your hand for those projects and do the very best that you can to succeed in those. And then the third I would say is just have like extremely strong professional ethics when it comes to work. I mean, if you're doing your best every day at work, if you're bringing the 200% of what you have to do in whatever it is that you're tasked to do, you will excel at it. And so don't always look for the shortcuts, but I mean, put in like the most of what you can do for whatever it is that you're signed up to do. And in doing that, you're going to inspire others around you, and you're going to end with a really, really good outcome. I would say that, I mean, again, I don't want to be on a soapbox and advise you, but those were some of the things that definitely worked well.
No, I think that helps us all. Mega has a question that is, who are some of the women leaders that have inspired you when you were growing up and learning about the world?
Wow, that's too many. I would say the very first was my mom. She is and will always be the person that I look up to the most. She passed away 4 years back, and that for me was, I would say, one of the hardest things that I had to deal with ever in my life. But she was a working mom, and so I'd say a lot of the work ethics that I get is from watching and observing her. She also broke a lot of, she was like the first, she grew up in a very small village in India, and then moved to the big cosmopolitan city that we lived in. And so she was the first from her village to get a master's degree. She was an educator. She was a teacher first, and then she was the principal of the school that she was in. And I would say, seen a lot of giving back from her to the community. She has paid fees of students who couldn't afford to pay their fees. She's taken extra hours for students who were falling back in their studies to make sure that they would catch up. And all of those were like with no expectations of getting anything back in return. So I'd say a lot of that giving back and thinking about paying it forward definitely comes from her. So she's definitely been my biggest role model. And then there were a lot of others as well, like people that I've worked with, people who I've looked up to. Like I said, that list is very, very long. I mean, I'm also thankful to a lot of male leaders that I have worked with who have been generous with their time and their advice, have taken the leap of faith on me when I was up and coming in my career, and gave me those opportunities that have been, I would say, stepping stones in helping me get forward to. And many of those are people that I continue to stay in touch. So yeah.
Okay, that was great. Ingrid asks you, and I think we have time for one more. How do you continue to grow and develop as a leader?
Mainly just by being curious and by knowing that I don't know it all. Like I'm probably at 10% of my capacity even today. And so I'd say in terms of how much I have to grow as a leader, as a person, like there's still a long way to grow. So the one thing that I look to do every day is, I mean, like on a weekly basis, I ask myself, what new have I learned this week? And I make sure that I set aside time to do that. And I would say the other thing that I want to also ensure is, how am I creating the future leaders with the people that I work with? Be it within my team, be it within the companies that I work with. How am I ensuring that I can help other people succeed? So I'd say those two are the things that I believe are going to help me evolve and get better each day. Yeah.
Okay, that was amazing. I don't know if anyone else has a small question. I have one, but I want to give the opportunity. I don't see any more questions. So what do you, when you're mentoring so many women, what are like the constant challenges and the constant questions that you receive, and what are your advices to those like big themes?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to female mentees, the most common ones, I mean, the first one is definitely about professional growth, and how do you get to that next level in the organization. And that again ties back to, like I said, raise your hands for the tough projects, deliver 200% of what you can bring to the table. Make sure that, I think one thing that I always encourage females in my organization to do, as well as underrepresented minorities, is we don't talk enough about what we do. And I would say it's one thing to deliver what you're doing, but the other thing is also to think about the brand and the image that you want to create for yourself as a leader. And so making sure that you're marketing your accomplishments the right way is as important as doing those accomplishments in the first place. And so that's something that I've always encouraged folks to do, not just on a personal level, like this also ties to the company level. I'm sure I've given Javi a earful on how we should think about brand and marketing. And Yalo doesn't have to be the best kept secret. Like this needs to be something that everybody knows. So I do think like brand, image, recognition, marketing are all things that we should be doing as individuals as well, as much as we encourage companies to think about that.
Okay, that was great. I think I don't know if Javi, you want to say something to round this conversation.
Well, I want to thank you, Rashmi. Thank you for sharing from the heart. This is the first time that I hear the full story, and it was fascinating to see the journey, the adventure, and live vicariously through it. So really, really appreciate the time. Thank you for it. And I think it inspires a lot of us to remain curious, remain hungry, and keep on asking questions, keep on raising the hand. I think as we as a company typically take the non-obvious path, and you know it on a lot of things, right? So I think non-obvious path seekers tend to find each other in the journey. So it's been incredible to do that. I have one final question that I wanted to ask, and it's, what is one question right now, like if you go like deep, what is one question in your life that you're trying to answer right now?
That's a very deep question. And I would say the last 4 years is something that it has made it more front and center for me. Like I said, I was extremely close to my mom, and so losing her was extremely hard for me. It's something that I still think about every single day. And so the one question that I ask myself every day is, what can I do that would create like a lasting, something that has like a lasting impression or a lasting thing beyond me? It's almost like, I don't want to call it as leaving a legacy. I think that's too big of a word, and I don't think I'm that important that I would leave a legacy behind. But at least if I've touched a lot of lives and I've made a difference to a lot of lives, like that for me would be a fulfilling life that I would have lived. And so the question I ask myself is, what can I do that that'll help me do that? Because again, like I said, I'm in a very different frame of mind today than what I was 5 years back. And one of the things that, I mean, looking back at my parents' journey as well, I still get calls and emails from people whose lives they've touched, and they were ordinary people. I mean, we grew up in a middle-class family in India, but they were ordinary people, and despite that, they had the ability to touch so many lives. And I feel like I'm not even 1% there. So what can I as an individual do to do that? Like, that's something that I think about a lot.
Well, amazing. I think you're already doing it, by the way. This amazing. I really like admire like the work that you have done, and please continue doing it, because you're opening doors for so many of us and for so many females. So really, thank you so much, Rashmi, for the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me. Like I said, Yalo is a special company for us, and all of you are extremely special to B Capital and to me personally. So thank you for the opportunity. Feel free to reach out if there's anything at all that we can do to help. And it was so nice meeting all of you.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. And I just wanted to say a sentence that you said, and you said you should always be leaving the door open for the person behind us. And I think you opened a lot of doors today for us and made us think in a different perspective, and that's very important. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Look forward to speaking again soon.
Yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.